Hi, I'm Joe Brennan, and I'm going to tell you the story of the wide-mouthed frog. Now, this story I need you to join in on. There's lots of interaction, so I want you to copy what I do. The first thing I need you to do is put your hands like this and do this. And that is, well, you've guessed it, that is the mouth of the frog. And it's a big mouth, so let's open it up nice and wide, just like that. And not only that, he can talk, so let's make the frog talk. If you met the frog, he'd come up to you and he would say, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And then when you tell him who you are and what you eat, he'll look at you and he'll say, "Wow, fascinating." Will we try that one more time? You ready? Okay, so you're the frog. You come hopping along and you meet somebody and say, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And when they tell you who they are and what they eat, you look and say, "Wow, fascinating." So we've got a young boy called Leo, and Leo loves to go out and play in the garden and to explore, and he's very curious with everything around. He's looking in the trees, he looks at the flowers, he looks under the flowers, he climbs up in the tree and he has a rope that swings backwards and forwards going whee! And one day, as he's walking through the garden, he sees a frog. No ordinary frog, because even though the frog's not very big, when he says, "Hello, Mr. Frog," the frog looks up and says, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" Leo couldn't believe it. A talking frog with a huge mouth. "Oh," said Leo, "my name's Leo, and I love to eat pasta and spaghetti bolognese and some chips and burgers, and I love some vegetables like broccoli and carrots, and I love spinach, and I love tomatoes and lettuce, and for dessert, I love chocolate ice cream." And the frog looked up and said, "Wow, fascinating." And then Leo thought, "Frog, if you're so interested in what I like to eat, why don't you hop around the world and see what some of the other animals like to eat?" And the frog said, "Good idea." And he hopped away. Now, we're going to make the frog hop. So, sit down on your bum, get comfortable, and put your hands like this. You ready? Here we go. The frog went hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop. Got it? Try it one more time, all together. Hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, till he spot a large brown animal standing in the middle of a river. The frog looked and said, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And that large brown animal said, "I'm a bear, and I eat honey and nuts and berries and fish." And the frog said, "Wow, fascinating." And he went hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, till he spotted a small animal that was only about this size. And he had two little pointy ears. He had a bushy stripy tail that was grey and white, and he had a black mask around his eyes that made him look like a robber. The frog looked at him and said, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And that animal said, "I'm a raccoon and I eat rubbish." "Yuck," said the frog. "Fascinating." And he went hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, till he spot an animal that had two heads. The frog looked up and said, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And that animal said, well, the big head said, "I'm a kangaroo." And the little head said, "Me too, and we eat grass and leaves." And the frog said, "Wow, fascinating." And he went hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, till he spot an animal that had four long legs and a big long neck. And the frog looked up and said, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And that animal looked down at the frog and said, "I'm a giraffe, and I eat the leaves from the tops of trees." And the frog said, "Wow, fascinating." And he went hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, hip, hop, hibbity hop, till he spot a nice comfortable place to go asleep. He curled up really small, he closed his eyes, and he fell fast asleep. He woke up suddenly. It was dark and it was quiet, but then he saw a long, thin creature sliding, slithering stealthily towards him. The frog looked down and said, "Hello, who are you and what do you eat?" And that creature raised up and hissed and said, "I'm a snake, and I eat wide-mouthed frogs." Have you seen any wide-mouthed frogs around here? The frog, he gulped. "Ooh, no, never seen a wide-mouthed frog in all my life." And then he Ready? Last time he went hip hop hibbity hop, hip hop hibbity hop, hip hop hibbity hop, hip hop hibbity hop, very fast away. And the frog, who stayed curious, was very careful before he opened his big mouth again. And that is a story that I heard from American storyteller Dan Kedding, and it's a great story that I love to tell. This story is a story that comes from Ireland, and it's a story you'll hear many versions of, but this is my version. And it's called The King Who Had Horse's Ears. And the story starts with the king when he was just a boy, and he was a prince, Prince Lowrig O'Lunshig. And he would wake up every morning, he'd stretch out in his bed, put his feet out of bed and run across to the mirror. And he'd run up to the mirror and he would stare into the mirror and he would smile and say, "Oh, I'm the most beautiful prince in the whole of Ireland." And off he would go about his business. Well, then one day he was walking past the royal stables when a horse, just by accident, stood on his toe. He started crying and he looked around to see if anybody was looking. And when he thought nobody was looking, do you know what he did? He pulled back his foot and he kicked the horse poof, up the backside. Went the horse, and Lowrig ran away laughing. But what Lowrig didn't know, there was an old woman who lived out around the stables. She was a hen woman. And anybody knows anything about hen women will know that they are friends with the wee folk. And they know a little bit of trickery and a little bit of magic. And she thought to herself, I'm going to teach that fella a lesson. The next day, Lowrig woke up as usual. He stretched out in his bed, jumped out of the bed and ran over to the mirror, looked in the mirror and went, "Oh, what's after happened to me? What's after happened to my ears?" Because there, on the top of his head, were two horses' ears twitching about. His own ears were gone. "Oh," he said, "I've got horses' ears. People are going to laugh at me and they won't think I'm beautiful anymore. Oh, what am I going to do?" And he looked around frantically when he saw his crown. He picked up his crown, he put it on his head, and he hid the ears. Oh, he thought, I am the most beautiful prince in the whole of Ireland. And off he went about his business. Now, you see, the thing is, he had to wear the crown all the time because he was determined that nobody would know about those ears. He went to play football, he put on his crown. When he went climbing in the trees, when he went riding on the horse, when he went swimming in the lake, and even when he went to the toilet, he wanted nobody to know. The years went by. And the years went by and he grew up, and then he became the king. And when he became the king, he got the king's crown. He lifted the crown, he put it onto his head, he looked in the mirror and he thought, oh, now I'm the most beautiful king in the whole of Ireland. There was loads of kings in those days. And off he went about his business. And he was busy going around the palace and lots of people bowing and scraping and saying, "Oh, your highness, your highness." When suddenly, well, his neck started to feel sore. And then his back started to feel sore, and his neck started to bend, and his back started to bend. And the problem was the crown. Because you see, crowns are not supposed to be worn all the time. They're just for special occasions. And the king's crown had more gold and diamonds and jewels, and it was just way too heavy. He couldn't wear it all the time. He sat down in the chair and he just started to blubber. Oh, what am I going to do? If I take it off, the people will see my ears, they'll laugh, they'll think I'm funny and they won't think I'm beautiful. Oh. This went on for hours. The servants came, they knocked on the door and said, "Sire, can we help you?" Go away. They got tired of it and they all went to bed. And in the middle of the night, the king's tears, well, they dried up. And even though he was inconsolable, the tears had stopped. And then he had an idea. He wondered what if his hair grew and that would cover the ears? So he ran into the bathroom, he went through the cabinet, and there he found it. Hair growing potion. He sprinkled it all on his head and he stood in front of the mirror. And he looked in the mirror and all he could see was his eyes that were all bloodshot from crying. But he stared and stared and stared. And then he closed his eyes and he... grow. Nothing happened. Oh, what am I going to do? He went back to the chair and fell asleep. Now, the morning came. And when the morning came, he opened his eyes. And he wondered. And he crept over to the mirror. And he peeked into the mirror. Oh, look, he said, I'm beautiful again. Because there you couldn't see the horse's ears. And there his hair had grown. And it had grown, Well, it had grown like a bush, but he didn't care. It was going out this way, out that way, over that way, and out that way, but could not see the ears. Well, he ran out of his bedroom and he ran through the palace singing, and everybody stopped and they were nearly about to laugh, but they thought, you can't laugh at the king. And off he went. Every morning he still woke up. He looked in the mirror and smiled and thought, oh, I'm so beautiful. And then one morning he looked in and he thought, well, maybe it needs a little cut. Just like a bush in your garden, it needs a cut every once in a while. So he ordered the royal barber to come in. And the royal barber came in, and of course he said about his business. Snip, 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 snip. And he was chatting away to the king, laughing about this and that. And the king just sat there looking straight forward when suddenly the barber saw the horse's ears. And you know what he did? He started to laugh. What are you laughing at? Said the king. Oh, sire, he said. Well, you have horse's ears. The king said nothing till he was finished cutting his hair. And then he called the guards. Guards, to the dungeon. He was dragged off to the dungeon and off with his head. The king didn't want anybody to know about his secret. A year went by, another barber came. The barber laughed, and year after year after year. And of course now people wondered, why is it the barbers go to the palace and they never come back? Yeah. He has some secret under that hair. Everyone wanted to find out, but who was going to find out? Well then, after many years and many barbers, there was one young barber who lived not far from the palace. His name was Porrick. And Porrick was working away in his little barber shop, and this day his mother came running into him. Oh, Porrick, she said, you have to hide, you have to get away from here. One of these days, those guards are going to come for you. They'll drag you up to that palace to cut his hair, and then you'll be gone. And who's going to look after your mammy then? She said, go on, please, please, please. And he said, oh, don't be worrying about me, ma'am. I'll be fine. The next day, the guards arrived. They came in and said, you must come and cut the king's hair. And his mammy was going, oh, please, don't pull him, don't take him away, take him away. And she was dragging him back and dragging him back. And the guards just pushed her away and dragged him up through the streets. And everybody saw him going, and they thought, oh, poor Porrick, he's going up to the palace. He's not going, oh. They felt so sorry for him, but what could they do? Porrick was terrified. He was brought into the palace. He had never been in the palace, and he wanted to look around with his eyes open wide, but all he could think about was the king and his poor neck. He was brought into the room. The king was sitting there, very stern, looking straight ahead. Cut my hair, he said. Now Porrick picked up the scissors, and his hands were shaking. He was just about to make the first snip when the door to the palace room burst open, and there was his mammy. Oh, King Lowrick, she said, please don't hurt my son. He's such a good boy, and, well, he takes care of me. And who's going to take care of me if you chop his head off? What is the meaning of this? Well, she said, you take the barbers and you chop their heads off. Please don't chop my son's head off. Now, the king felt bad about chopping all these heads off, but, you know, he had a secret to keep, so that was most important. And he looked at Porrick, and he looked at his mother, and he looked back at Porrick, and he said, can you keep a secret? Porrick couldn't speak, but his mammy could. Oh, he'll keep a secret, sire, he will. He's a good boy, he's a good boy. Well, said the king, you keep my secret, you keep your head. You let out my secret and, well, we let off your head. The mother left, and Porrick started to cut the king's hair. Very slowly. Snip, snip, snip. And then all of a sudden, he could see them. The horse's ears. And what did he do? Well, he did nothing. Said nothing. He just kept on cutting. Snip, snip, snip. And when he had finished, he lifted up the mirror to show the king the back and the side, and the king nodded. And then he looked at Porrick and said, now you know my secret. You keep my secret, you keep your head. You let out my secret. Porrick left the palace. And as he was walking towards the great doors of the palace, well, now it was Porrick whose back was slumped. And Porrick whose head was slumped over, because now he was carrying a weight that was greater than any weight the king ever bore on his shoulders. He was carrying the weight of a secret. And he walked back through the streets of the town. And as he was walking back, all the people saw him and they said, look, it's Porrick, he's come back from cutting the king's hair. He must know the king's secret. So the next day, when he opened up the barber shop, there were hundreds of people outside waiting to have their hair cut. There was people there who had never had a haircut in their lives before. There was people there who didn't even have any hair to get cut. But they all sat in the chair and they all said the same thing. What's the king's secret? Because you can tell me, I'll keep it a secret. But of course he couldn't. That evening he went home and his mammy had his favourite dinner ready for him, and he just looked at it and said, I don't feel like eating, mammy. And then he sat down in the chair and he stared into the fire, and it was time for bed, and he went to bed and he just tossed and turned all night thinking about the king's secret, and all the people asking him that same question, what's the king's secret, what's the king's secret, what's the king's secret? He got up the next day, he sat down and he says, I can't go to work anymore, mammy. I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I can't work. Now, of course, his mother was very worried about him and his friends. And they clubbed together and thought, what can we do? And they said, well, there's a wise old woman who lives up in the hills. Let's go and talk to her. And they did. And they told her what had happened. And the wise woman said, well, if he's carrying a secret that makes him feel like he can't eat and he can't sleep, he has to get it out. So he needs to tell it out. But, they said, if he tells it out and the king finds out, she said, that's a problem. And then she had to think about it, and she thought, oh, I know what he can do. Tell him to go into the woods behind the palace, and there is a willow tree, a magic willow tree. Tell him to put his arms around it, give it a hug, and whisper his secret, and that will take away all his worries. Well, they ran back to tell Porrick, and Porrick looked at him with his eyes wide, and he said, I have to hug the tree. Yeah. And I have to talk to the tree. Yes, just do it. Well, off he went. And he went into the palace grounds, and he skirted round and out into the woods, and he searched about, and there he found the willow tree. There was only one willow tree. He went up to the willow tree, and he felt a bit strange going to talk to the tree and hug it. And he looked around, but there was nobody about. So he put his arms around the tree. Go on, you can try it too. Put your arms around the tree. That's it. It's not so bad. It won't hug you back or anything. And he whispered, you ready? The king has horses' ears. Actually felt good. He felt a weight lifting off him. So he thought he would do it one more time. Louder this time. But we're going to do it in a loud whisper. You ready? The king has horse's ears. He felt even better. So he thought, third time for luck, and this time he did the loudest whisper possible. You ready? 1, 2, 3. The king has horse's ears. Well, he felt great. The weight was completely lifted off him. He walked home. He skipped home, in fact. And he arrived home, he ate his dinner, he went to bed, and he went back to work and forgot all about the king. Now the king, well, you see, the king still woke every morning, ran to the mirror, looked at himself and thought, oh, I'm so beautiful. And one day as he was looking in the mirror, he thought to himself, now, there's a beautiful princess who lives over the road. I'm beautiful and she's beautiful. Really, we should get married. So he organised a huge party and he invited the princess. And of course everybody guessed what he was going to do. Everything was prepared. The place was painted, all the best food, all the best drink. And then the king remembered that the princess loved music, harp music. So he called in the royal harper. Harper, you are to play the most beautiful music that's ever been heard in the palace. Oh, sire, and he bowed. Of course, but he said, I have a problem. What problem? Well, he said, it's my harp, you see, it's broken. Well, then fix it, he said. Well, I've tried to fix it and it's still broken. Well, then try again. Well, he says, no, I need to make a new one. Well, then go make a new one. Do I have permission to go into the woods and chop a tree? I said, of course, go. And off he went into the woods. And can you guess what tree he needed? A willow tree. Because that's what harps were still made from, the willow. And he took the wood and he went back and he made his harp. And on the night of the party, everybody gathered. And everybody sat there drinking and eating the best food. And at the top was the king and the princess. And she looked gorgeous. And the king was whispering to her, telling her stories and trying to crack funny jokes that really weren't funny. But she laughed anyway. She was that kind of girl. And then the food all ended. And the king looked and said, music. And the harper came in. And he knew that this music was going to be perfect. In fact, he knew this music would be magical. And he started to pluck on the strings. And the music started to waft and weave its way around the room. And it was one of those occasions where everyone there went, ah, and their heads fell to one side. Try that. Ah. But then the harp started to sing rather than play music. And suddenly the harp was singing, the king has horse's ears. The king has horse's ears. The king has horse's ears. Everybody froze. And they stared. And then the princess, she started to laugh. And then everybody started to laugh. The king jumped up. He pulled off his crown. And there you could see the 2 horses' ears. And everybody laughed some more. And then the princess put her finger to her lips and said, shh. And everybody fell silent. The princess looked at the king. Lowering, she said. Is this the reason you chopped the heads off all those barbers? Yes, he said. He felt bad about it. And she looked and said, oh, you big fool. Nobody cares what you look like, you know. All that people care about is what's in your heart. And you've a pretty good heart. Okay, you weren't so good to the barbers, but you know, otherwise, you're a good king. Well, from then on, he decided there was no reason to hide his ears. Porrick, he became the royal barber. He moved in and lived in the palace, and so did his mammy. And he only had to cut the king's hair once a month, every month. And the king would get down on all fours and pretend to be a real horse. And the boys and girls were allowed to climb on his back, kick him in the bum and say, giddy up, horsey. And he'd go scurrying across the floor and they'd all have a great laugh. But then, of course, the reason for the party, well, he was going to ask the princess to get married. He turned to the princess and said, oh, beautiful princess, I'm beautiful and you're beautiful. We should get married. Will you marry me? And she stood there going, and she looked around at all the expectant faces, wondering if somebody could help her. And some of those faces went, and some of them went. And then eventually she turned to the king and she says, well, I'll have to think about it. And as far as I know, she's still thinking about it. And that's the story. Thank you.